Welcome to the first episode of the podcast for ISAPN for 2026. I am Chris Gill, the current president of ISAPN and your host for this episode. And I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Yvonne Tumbali, who is recently been elected into the role of president-elect. And so with that, Yvonne, if you wouldn't mind, I think if you could just give the members a sense of who you are, your background, and what made you run for the position.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Hi, everybody. So first off, I'm going to give you my 2-minute elevator speech, but it's not really going to be 2 minutes. And Chris is going to need to stop me because I could go on and on. I'm 37 years a nurse and 27 of those years as an adult acute care nurse practitioner. My first positions were in an ICU, mixed med-surg ICU, and then I moved into internal medicine and inpatient cardiology. So I think I've been blessed with not only having a lens through the ICU, but also from an internal medicine standpoint and cardiology. I joined faculty at Rush University College of Nursing 15 years ago. I just received my letter for thank you for your service. And I, all along in the time that I was a nurse practitioner, I've had precepted students. So I knew moving forward that it's a passion of mine. I'm also a charter member of ISAPN, meaning that when it was first pulled together, how many years ago when we didn't have a Nurse Practice Act, I was one of the many who sat down and we talked about what was initially going to be introduced into the Practice Act. I'm second generation. I'm going to close with this, Chris. Hang on. I'm second generation nurse practitioner. My mom was first generation. She immigrated from the Philippines. And I learned early on the community and social determinants of health because she worked at Old Cook County Hospital. And she would take me to work with her and I would sit in the waiting area and meet everybody. So I really had a firsthand view of what it was like with people who didn't have access to healthcare and what they needed to do in order to get healthcare. So that's it about me. There's much more, but you'll get to know me a little bit more later on. Thanks, Chris.
I love it. I love it. That's a great overview. And, I think talk about coming like full circle between being a founding member and now serving in the position of president-elect and soon to be president next year. Could you just give us a sense kind of what made you run at this point in time and kind of what you're excited to do or kind of your forward-thinking trajectory for the organization over the next, year to 3 years, really, because that's when you'll be involved in these positions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think what really pushed me this past year was what I was hearing from students about what was concerning to them as future advanced practice nurses. They're young, we've been kind of, like I said, I've been 27 years, and they're concerned about with the current climate, what's happening, in a national and international level. When I submitted my paperwork to run for president-elect, I thought about it a long time, but I used the 3 C's, which is why I solidified for me why I wanted to continue and to run for president-elect, is collaborate, the 3 C's, collaboration, connection, and community. I think for many years being with ISAPN, the collaboration amongst us, CRNAs, CNMs, CNSs, I think the benefit of ISAPN and sharing that with the future advanced practice nurses, that connection that we need to continue to build, especially with the new graduates, and then community. It's not just, we all became nurses because we wanted to provide quality patient care, and we want to continue that moving forward, but we need to do that as a community. It's not a solo, we're not silos. It's connections and community with not only ourselves as an organization, but organizations, hospitals, communities, patients, families, etc., and the colleges. It's not just all about the college that I'm practicing at. There's other colleges of nursing out there that are struggling with similar issues. So I thought this was a good time I'm 57. I'm okay to say that. It's okay. And I felt like I want to contribute something and give something a little bit more before I retire soon. So that's why.
I love it. I really appreciate hearing that perspective. And, I think that's one of the reasons that being a nurse and being even more specifically an APRN is such a exciting kind of reality, right? And I
Mhm.
agree wholeheartedly with you on the cohesiveness, as most, pretty much everyone probably knows at this point. I have the privilege of being board certified in two roles, nurse practitioner and CRNA. And I have long been proud of the CRNA roots alongside the NP roots, but I think that CRNAs sometimes forget that they are part of the APRN tribe, and having that cohesiveness and having that milieu where we all engage together. Although we practice in different specialties and we have different educational needs, having that collaboration is really what distinguishes us as being strong, right? So I think
Absolutely.
I agree with
Absolutely.
your three C's. Um, so let's talk a little bit about your perspective on the current landscape for APRN. So, you know, you've talked about it being second generation NP. You've talked about your time as a nurse practitioner in various roles, education, clinical practice. To you, party of one, from your vantage point,
Yes.
what do you think feels the hardest for APRNs right now? Let's talk about it in Illinois.
I think we've come along. Thank you. I think we've come a long way as far as practice barriers.
Mhm.
I think over time, I've heard from members about certain things related to pharmacy. There's some barriers to practice. Our colleagues who work in certain organizations, even in the clinic setting, I've heard from a couple of colleagues where they didn't have a very strong relationship with their physician colleagues in that practice. I'd like to, I think the practice barriers is the biggie.
Mhm.
That's the thing that I think drives most APRNs to join ISAPN is because they've come across or come up against something challenging. But I think the workforce strain and access to care issues, and now we're struggling. This is the most recent with the determination of professionalism. And it's what I'm concerned about, we're all concerned about, is most especially the educators, is because the future, the students don't have the financial support as they might have had before in order to reach their goals, their dreams, etc. And it's impacting them now in the sense that they're nervous,
Mhm.
right? They're already in a very challenging academic program, but to hear that financially they may not have the resources to continue, that's one of the big things I think is when I talk about workforce strain, that's part of it is what happens, in the next 5 years. um, the other pieces, I think state and federal, I think that, the federal piece speaks for itself. I think with the loss of all of the usual or typical services that individuals on a regular need because they're low income, socioeconomic status, social determinants of health, that's being challenged. And the sequelae, I think, is we're going to see not, well, we see some of it now, but it's even going to get worse in the next 3 to 5 years. And then, of course, there's the advocacy piece. And I know, Chris, that's something that you feel very strongly about. So I'm going to let you take it over from there.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that the issues facing students today are not issues that we individually felt, or we may have felt them in different ways, right? I think the financing piece for graduate education is always a strain and a stressor, and reduced working or working different shifts that are maybe not preferential, but you're always doing more than what you would be doing when you're in your career. So there's a stressor to that whole experience that I
Mhm.
think is formative, right? Does help push us to that next level. But do we need to, and I agree with you, do we need to add unnecessary strain, right? The definition of professional students, loan caps, and loan amounts. Graduate education has only gotten more expensive over time. Uh, Multitude of reasons why that is. I don't think
Mhm.
it's directly tied to faculty compensation, but for sure it's gotten more expensive over time. And so, students take on a greater loan debt. And if that gets reduced in some form, there's a problem, right? There's going to
Mhm.
be there's going to be a bottleneck in terms
Mhm.
of the pipeline of qualified professionals at the point of care. So, there's a lot of unintended consequences to what seems like, you know, reasonable policy changes. So I
Right.
think all of that is well stated. I mean, I've kind of touched on it, but why does unity matter more now today than even a few years ago?
I very much feel as part of my platform was just a collective voice. I think individually where we can be impactful, but I think the bigger picture is what can we do as a group, and numbers speak more, especially when you're thinking about advocacy or even promoting anything for that matter. It doesn't even have to be anything related to advocacy. If it's just one person sounding a horn, nobody really isn't going to listen. But the collective voice and having a common goal, I think that's huge.
Yes, and my comment to share with the group and individuals listening to this episode is, showing up and having this cohesive APRN network, although it's not necessarily common in every state, I do think it provides a lot of strength behind the brand and the moniker to have all APRNs sitting kind of at a common table and with a common voice. Alongside that of nursing, right? Because there's more nurses in the United States than there are physicians,
Mhm.
right? Probably more APRNs actually. I guess I'd have to
Mhm.
look at that stat and fact check it, but more APRNs. But Susan, the executive director, Susan Schwartz, and I had the opportunity this past weekend to join the Texas Nurse Practitioner NP State Summit, which is an invitation-only event. It was supposed to be in person because of the weather. It was converted to virtual. It's really important to hear the stories that other states are facing because we think that we're siloed in our politics here. All politics are kind of technically local, but I do think there's a lot of commonality as you
Mhm.
listen to those dialogues and those narratives and the political maneuvering or political activities that occur in one state do have learning value for other states, right, when facing similar challenges. And I think, going to that event and listening to other states talk, they're NP only state associations, a lot of them.
Yeah.
There are a couple of coalitions like this, but we're rather unique. And I think that that is something that is advantageous. I don't see that as being a detriment. It is a challenge to activate all of the groups equally. But I do think having everyone at the table or going to lobby or going to ask for things cohesively does convey a lot of benefit. So.
Mhm. I agree. I echo that. And I wish next year I'm going to attend this wonderful summit, this conference. But the other piece which you highlighted that is part of, who we are is the four different specialties. And you had an opportunity to share what we do as the four specialties.
Mhm.
And it's unique to have CRNAs, CNMs, CNPs, CNSs, to talking to each other
Mhm.
and sharing common views and common issues. So, yeah, thank you for highlighting that. It's huge, huge.
100%. I'd like to kind of switch a little bit. It's very similar, but talk about some top priorities that we have for 2026. I mean, certainly, based on the way that the Illinois legislature works, there's kind of a year where things are moved forward, and then a second year that follows after that where bills may not be heard or things may not progress as much. And we're in one of those years now. But we're always constantly laying the groundwork and the foundation for initiatives that we're looking to achieve policy directions we think are going to benefit the citizens and the patients we serve in Illinois. Um, what's kind of on your radar screen as one of the key priorities from a legislative cycle that we're kind of targeting?
Absolutely. I think first is you, the CRNA group. I think the full practice authority.
Hmm.
For many years, many of us, all of us actually, have thought, we've got to ensure that our colleagues also have full practice authority. And I was one of the many that, raised my hand and said this should be our priority for 2026 through 2027. I know you'll share others, but I think as part of, there's that emblem, above our head. It seems like there's only three-fourths of the circle filled for full
Mhm.
practice authority. And every time I see that emblem, I just think about you and a CRNA. I've worked with you forever, especially in the ICU. Is
Yes.
nurse, it's anesthesia that actually trained me.
Uh-huh.
So I've worked with CRNAs, and I have many friends who are, including you, of course. But it's something that I feel very strongly and passionate about. I'm not a CRNA, but I feel that, it's time. It's
Mhm.
time.
That's great. And I can tell you that my CRNA colleagues and the friends and colleagues that you have will appreciate that. A big part of that is, I think, building out working relationships and with other organizations. And one that we have really, April Odom, who was the president last year, really started that endeavor in earnest. But working with the Illinois Association of Nurse Anesthetists, IANA, and really having dialogues with them on an ongoing fashion and ongoing basis. And that's beneficial on both sides, right? We're trying to encourage CRNAs to be part of ISAPN because we are representing their unique needs alongside the other three roles. We just had the midwifery win this past year, which was incredible, right?
Hmm. Oh gosh,
NPs
yes.
have had full practice authority in Illinois for some time and enjoyed that privilege. So, you know, all of it combined to say that we're moving the right direction. Um, the other things that I think we've talked about, and just as a board, but in concept, but we're really trying to move forward, are modernizing through the right path. Right, we're still trying to decide the correct path to take on this, but modernizing the medical staff
Mm.
committee bylaws in the Hospital Licensing Act. Right now, it says there can only be a physician, a dentist, a podiatrist, but it does not include any APP representation. And as you and I both know, APPs play an enormous role, I think,
Mhm.
all throughout healthcare, whether it's academic, tertiary settings, all the way to, clinics. So having the ability to see other APPs serve in those capacities, just simple as you're the APP chief making a hiring decision. If your candidate goes for privileges and your license type is not allowed to be on that, any of the activities, the discussions, or information that's found out is confidential and contained within that committee. You, as the hiring manager, can never even find that out. I think that
Mhm.
that just really um, shows that we're behind the times, right, in terms of
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. Agree. It's outdated.
Yeah.
And there's a number of our colleagues who have expressed that that's barriers to practice.
Hmm.
There's, as there's some institutions that will limit whether they can admit or discharge, or
Hmm.
whether they can transfer the patient from one to the other. And they've often not only reached out to myself, but to ISAPN asking, what can we do about X, Y, and Z? And because of the outdated language, there's not much we can do at this point. But there's hope for the future as we move forward with the sunset and getting some, as you mentioned, new modern language in.
Hmm.
And I liken it to sustainability and preparing um, the APRNs for future in practice in Illinois. Um, by the next Practice Act, I probably will not be here, Chris. I'm just saying that, meaning that I'm going to retire. So it would be nice that, the future advanced practice nurses, our current advanced practice nurses and future, are set up for success.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, inclusive language, especially considering the move, I think, to the DNP curriculum, and having education broadly in leadership and management topics and the economics of healthcare, which, not every healthcare provider is trained in that. I mean, certainly you learn it on the job, but I think having that formal curriculum at the doctoral level does position us positively for having a seat at the table and contributing, right? I think that's
Agree.
the biggest
Hmm.
part is not just having a seat at the table, but it's contributing to the process. Um,
Yes. Yes. I,
so I think
I agree very much so.
great points. The last thing, which isn't directly ours that we own, but is, I know you've been a part of a number of coalitions probably in your time in healthcare and having worked in advocacy roles as well, is the sunset of the Nurse Practice Act. We really just need to be um, collaborative with other vested stakeholders, the American Nursing Association, Illinois, ISAPN, IANA. Everyone kind of really has a vested interest in that. Where the package of laws and regulations get opened up and can be adjusted either positively or negatively. We want to see the law package fit the contemporary nursing practice. I think that's ultimately the purpose of a
Hmm.
sunset provision, is to make sure that it's always consistent with what's being done at the point of care and at the bedside. But there's potential for, again, as I said, negative and positive, and we want to make sure that we don't have too many negatives and we have a lot more positives than negatives when that opens up. So,
Agree. Agree. Being vigilant. We've seen so many laws, acts that have been reversed or changed. And I think, not that we wouldn't be cognizant or intentional about it moving forward, but it just heightens an awareness that, oh, it's 10 years. We need
mhm,
to update the act and protect, what we currently have and hopefully gain more moving forward, especially the CRNAs. So yes, I agree. It's a great time for not only advocacy but also to position ourselves to be vigilant and to maintain our current practice, if not to ask for more.
mhm, mhm. Well said. Definitely presidential speak there. Uh,
I didn't even get out my thesaurus.
it was perfect. I think just kind of curious to kind of maybe probe a little bit here in terms of leadership vision that you have and what guides you and what has, held you in high regard, individually, and then where you see yourself as a leader here in ISAPN. I think themes always come up. The themes that I think of are, for some of them are for me directly, and then I think in these governance roles, one, absolutely stability, right? There has to be stability in terms of presence, but passing information between individuals. I think, I need to be making you aware of everything, just like April made me aware of things, and we need to be sharing those with the board when there is the time to do so. Credibility for sure, right? We have to kind of
Mm-hmm.
mean what we say. We have to follow through with what we do and what we promise. It's all about relationships ultimately, because relationships are what allow us to be successful. And I think it's infrastructure, right? Infrastructure at a membership level from a value proposition of like, what are you getting from us?
Mm-hmm.
Membership, or excuse me, infrastructure from an advocacy standpoint, from a lobbyist standpoint, which we have strong relationships and a strong partner in that process. But those are my thoughts. What to you, what excites you most as you prepare to step in, or as you're stepping into this role of president-elect?
Um, Thank you for that question. I think I'm going to go back to what I stated in my platform, and I used the initials for ISAPN. I very much feel very strongly about inclusivity and ensuring not only that all our APRN specialties are represented, but that we hear from all our members, right? And listen to what they have, their concerns are for not only, the future of ISAPN, but what they need for their patients and family members. I also liken it to, I'm going to just throw the S out there, safe spaces. You know, there's some of our colleagues are working in areas where they don't feel they can share what they want to share, but if they have a organization that supports them, then they feel a little safer in sharing what concerns they have, And then just that networking, of course, is a safe space.
Mhm.
Advocacy, that's, we've talked about that already. Promoting the role, nursing, so that's the P and the N. And I guess I find myself, because I'm a charter member, I know where we've been.
Mhm.
I know where we are now, and I I think I know where we need to go. And it's all of the above that I mentioned as far as ISAPN, inclusivity, safe spaces, advocacy, promoting us, APRNs, and then nursing. That's who we are. But I'm going to go back to where I currently work is the future. And, pulling in the new graduates, we see the benefits of ISAPN, but then now sharing that with the next generation, I think is also important. Again, where we need to be, where we need to go.
Mhm.
So it's nurturing the future leaders, nurturing who we are now and our future leaders.
You kind of just tackled two of my questions for you. One was about which I, I don't think I shared the full deck with you, so kudos to you for anticipating. One of them was on growth and evolution of ISAPN, which you already talked about. And the second was talking about students and mentorship. I agree with you, but I'm going to ask you a more pointed question here momentarily. I do agree with you, right? That there's so many different kind of multifactorial changes. I think, learners today are different than 10 years ago. I think there's different pressures today than there were 10 years ago. I look at things as simple as crowdsourcing documents and being able to transmit them amongst, a cohort or classmates. I didn't have that when I was in graduate school the first time, right? So it was like very much like notes that you wrote out, and you'd either photocopy or take pictures and maybe share those. But very, I hate to date myself, but I am becoming
Okay,
dated with
we're
every year that,
dating ourselves.
yeah, with every year that goes by, I'm just auto dating. But that the big changes. I think it's hard for people to see, with social media. I think it's hard for them to see the value proposition of networking, but how much benefit comes from, although yes, you may have heard that educational topic before when you go to the conference. I try to take the mentality of like if I learn one new thing on a topic, it's worth me sitting there for an hour. I had to do that a long time ago to trick myself into listening to things over and over. But I think the networking that occurs outside of that when you're engaging with other APRNs, other NPs, CRNAs, midwives, CNSs. You just really never know what that's going to turn into. It could be as simple as a friendship. It could be as complex as a future employer or, a colleague you're recruiting to your practice that really moves the needle and turns the dial. So just, networking, I think, in the current day and age with social media being so prevalent is kind of understated. Like that in-person time. You and I are doing this Zoom webinar, although so much of our body language and the nonverbal cues are lost, right? I mean, you and I know each other fairly well at this point, so we can anticipate. But if you don't have those connections pre-built, it's kind of hard to engage fully in this medium. So I think coming, joining, showing up, it
Mhm.
may be a Saturday that you give up or a weekday night, but I think you always leave more full of new ideas and hope and energy when you engage with like-minded people in those spaces. So um, I've talked more than I wanted to. It's more I'm supposed to moderate, not blabber on as much as I do.
We're doing it together. It's shared.
Perfect. Perfect. You just made me feel much better. So, um, you've worked in an education role for some time now. How do you see ISAPN being most successful supporting students, but then the early careerists that's coming out in Illinois?
Yes, I think the big part in that is the word that comes up first is mentorship. I think we have a lot to share with them, and that we can't share it with them unless they are with us, joining us as well. I think the other piece too is um, getting them just in the door is sort of I this is something personal that I did is I intentionally as gifted three students from my program a gift card so that they could join ISAPN. And, at this point, they're students, so they have a reduced rate. But I felt very strongly like, let me just get them in the door. And then they could share what they've learned with their friends. So the mentorship part of it, I mean, we mentor all the time, but the intentional piece of it is for them they don't know what they don't know. We've got to share with them what the whole ISAPN is about. And the only way to do that is for them to participate. So I feel very strongly about membership and then the mentoring. We do it all the time. I know, Chris, you do it all the time too, but we don't formally call it mentoring.
Right.
But to them, especially they're so young and this generation is growing up with AI. And we're grappling with it as, experienced APRNs, but this new group, all the different platforms, and we're used to face to face. That's how I learn. That's how you learn. And to see them now trying to navigate the space of all of these platforms and AI, I see the struggle, but I also, AI is not going anywhere. So how can we spin it so that it's advantageous for them? And they can use AI to benefit themselves in not only work settings, but of course in work settings, but professionally. How can you take all of these platforms and move forward in your practice and streamline what you do? It's just making it easier. So I know that's a lot. I could go on, Chris, if you don't, stop me.
No, I think it's great. I mean, that's one of the questions I think that, this is kind of getting off the advocacy thing, but I think, hey, we're not just here for advocacy, we're here for education and giving our perspective. And I agree with your perspective. I think what's going to be really challenging for learners and early careers is that for learners, it's going to be, how much do I need to memorize, right? Because there are things you have to memorize and you have to have at the ready, right? You can't be querying a database or using AI to help you. There are other long-range diagnostic decision-making choices where AI is a perfect use to help you screen through and propose potentials and differentials that you can then exclude using your intellect, your experience, and your fund of knowledge, right? So I think that's going to be a challenge for learners today that we didn't have. A lot of it was just brute force memorization or applying. So, that's going to be a challenge. So you're right. Like the AI thing's not going away. It's embedded in everything now in some form. Doximity, open evidence. I think even ChatGPT just released something on health. So I think it's going to be something where we're going to have to invest considerable time and effort to understand the right way to use it and the wrong way to use it.
Exactly. And the only other thing I wanted to add to that, I just sparked something with what you mentioned, Chris, is current events. So all of these other platforms, we purposely embedded an assignment in course recently where the students had to look at current events, what's happening in the world outside of where they are right now, even if it might be uncomfortable, but we're going to talk about it as a group. And they really embrace that. I was actually a little concerned that, maybe they didn't want to do this, but they love it. They're going on the internet. They're going, they're watching the news.
That's good.
Everyone, I'm not saying you don't watch the news. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just like, they're more intentional with it because it's an assignment.
That's right.
But I think not only the new platforms, but being aware of what's going on around you that might impact your practice.
Well stated. Well stated. What do you think, aside from AI, what do you think the value proposition is for current members or future members or just APRNs in general investing in the next generation? Like what is the ROI for us as clinicians, providers, leaders investing in the next generation from your standpoint? I'm sure someone invested in you. I know people invested in me. What does it look like in the future for them?
Well, the word sustainability just popped. Sustainability, but succession planning also popped into my mind. The two S's. And I think we, the previous generation, helped us get to a certain place. And then we carried it moving forward. And I think we then need to set up the next generation for success. And thus investing in them. It's all of this work that has been done. The return on in the investment is that it's sustainable over time. That the APRNs, the full practice, whatever it's going to look like in the future, we're still not only embedded in it, whatever that future in healthcare looks like, but they're taking with it the information that we have learned from the previous generation. It's that it's and improving health. I mean, that goes without saying, right? Improving healthcare, providing for. I think what many other specialties don't realize, or they hear about what it means to be a nurse, is we live it, we're passionate about it. There's reasons why we're the most trusted profession, is because we feel it, right? And I think carrying that over, that return of investment, is to ensure that the future does have the tools that it needs to be successful moving forward. The return of investment might not necessarily be monetary, but I think it could, you could liken it to taking this to the next generation. And I honestly don't know what it's going to look like in 5 to 10 years. I didn't know AI was coming, and look, here it is. Who knows what else is coming? But at least we've given the tools and the foundation for the next generation to work from.
That's perfect. And I couldn't have said that better at all. For me, a lot of it comes down to, I agree with succession planning. I probably, like you, put in for this position of, being president-elect, the rope toe to president, to the immediate past president. That's the way we do things here. It was, you have to invest some sweat equity in things. I think that maybe is a little bit lost in translation with current generation. It often, it's like, what does it do for me directly? What are the tangible things I'm going to get from it? I think you have to flip that script a little bit and say, there may not be things I can say that are tangible that I'm going to get, but I am going to improve myself. And if I grow and expose myself to successive challenges, I will improve over time, broad base, right? And I think, oftentimes when I've been asked, like, what made you successful at this point in your career, I would say that oftentimes it's saying yes, not no. Although at times you're fatigued because you're like, well, I maybe said yes to too many things. That's a chronic issue. But I think that those opportunities that people give you, you have to say yes to them before you feel you're fully ready, right? So that's part of
Right.
the growth curve. And I am not going to be doing this for forever, right? I believe very firmly in doing the job, getting the next people involved, and then helping them be successful. And that doesn't mean instructing them I kind of coined this. I don't know if I actually coined this term, but if you had a preceptor in anesthesia training that was a little overly hands-on, you just said, "Well, I'm like anesthesia butler, right? Like you just tell me what to do and I'll do it." I don't want to be. I don't want to have like the president butler mentality. But I think that you have to be there to be a sounding board and a resource after you've stepped out of the role. And then you have to say, you're in that position, you're trusted, you're valued, respect your judgment, right? And people need to make those decisions, learn from mistakes, and grow from wins. So, um,
Agree. Agree.
what we, I think, want to do as kind of a soft closing here is just talk about being you know being a member of ISAPN. If you've let your membership lapse, we'd love to see you come back. We'd love to see you renew. If you've never been a member, we want to see you join. It's no secret that membership organizations took a hit in terms of absolute numbers and participation during COVID. I think society changed then, but we want to see you come back if you've been a member, or join if you've never been one. Um, there's lots of opportunities to serve, and that doesn't have to, that can be within your defined limits. If you have a willingness and you have a will, an ability to invest some time, we'll give you the rest. And then I think it's staying informed and staying engaged. Those are the other key things, right? We
Mhm.
all know our colleagues that we work with, regardless of our roles. They're either really into it or they're totally disengaged, right? Letting the other people, the
Mhm.
engaged people, do the work for them.
Mhm.
Um, if you're one of those people that is disengaged, the only thing I would say is donate to the pack because someone else is doing all that work for you, and they need those resources to be successful. So if you're disengaged, and don't want to do anything, the least you can do is donate to the pack.
That's the minimum.
Right, exactly. But there's so many different endeavors here, and I've covered a bunch, but is there anything that you want to add kind of in closing to tell people,
Oh yeah,
for the next year?
we're fun.
There we go. I
I
love
know
it.
we hit some heavy topics and we needed to, and it's important that you have an idea of where, our current president and oh my gosh, President-Elect. I can't even say the title. But we are fun. I will run around and meet everybody and take pictures. And I am not like past President April Odom, who posts on social media, but it's one of those where I'm the second, I think. But we are fun. We do have fun activities. We learn from each other. We collaborate. We network. The thing that I heard most in the past two conferences, even when we moved to Rockford, was people walked up to the board and said, "This is different. It just feels more inclusive. I feel like this is a different kind of ISAPN." So it's not that it was different, negative before. It's
Yeah,
just it's different. We're moving in a different direction. The climate has changed, and there's serious topics, but we're also, please remember, we're also still fun.
I love that. I think that's such an important thing to hit, and I would agree. When you said April, and you're talking about your own energy and the way that you show up. I show up in a different way, right? I think that too often we kind of compare ourselves to one, archetype or personality type, but there are so many that present and have success in different ways, and we're just we're fun. We are fun, and we have a good time. And I think we make good decisions, and I think we're moving the needle for APRNs in the state. So with that, I agree. We hit a couple of heavy topics. The thing we often think about with these podcasts and setting these up is like, what do you want to hear from us about? So
Yes.
I would encourage anyone listening to this, and I'll make sure it's included in the show notes or in the text, but you can email president@isapn.com, and we can tackle those for you. And we'd love to hear from you. And the other place that you can go to if you want to send us a message is go to the isapn.enpnetwork.com contact. There's a contact form there. If you don't want to email it directly, you want to have a little bit uh, farther connection from it, send it there. We would love to aggregate some of the things that are important to members and people that are considering membership and tackle those on future episodes. So um, Yvonne,
Thank you, Chris. Thank
I
you.
want to thank you for the time, and I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you.
Likewise. Thank you, Chris. Bye, everybody. We hope to hear from you. Bye for now.
Bye bye.